Hello, you're watching TelecomTV. My name is Martyn Warwick and we're here at ONS 2014 Open Networking Summit in Santa Clara in California in the USA. And I'm talking this time with Dr. Inder Gopal, who is VP, Vice President for Systems Networking Development at IBM. Inder, very welcome. SDN is moving from theory to reality, from hype to actual practical application. At last, some might say, but it seemed to come up on most of the world unexpectedly. About October the year before last, it suddenly appeared like NFV, suddenly out of nowhere, almost completely formed, but it's taken a while to get to that stage in the first place. How long have you been working on SDN?
I've personally been working on it for about 3 or 4 years, and the industry as a whole, as you know, has been working on it for probably about 7 or 8 years, if not more. So this is certainly not something that's crept up overnight. It's been quite a ways in the making.
And as I say, we're moving beyond the theory now, and we're seeing this. Is what we're seeing a revolution in virtualization or an evolution in virtualization, do you think?
Well, it's probably a little bit of both, right? I mean, on the one hand, it is a revolution in the sense that it is a fundamentally new way of looking at networking. And it is changing the way in which networks are operated, networks are managed. So I think a lot of the existing paradigms that are commonplace in terms of the way networks are operated today are going to change as they go forward. But it is an evolution in the sense that many of these ideas have been around for a while, right? I mean, they're not as I said, they have been in percolation for a while. And if you go back to the history of networking, you'll find these concepts of separating control plane and data plane. A lot of the things that people talk about today in the context of SDN, were proposed, maybe a decade or more ago. I mean, yes, it is a revolution in the sense that it is going to fundamentally change the way data centers are operated and the way service provider networks are operated. But it's perhaps not so much a revolution in terms of the core technology itself.
Given the power that the service providers have currently, they are more or less dictating to the manufacturers and vendors what they want. We need this is why we need it, provide it or we'll go somewhere else. It's a sea change. What do you make of that?
I think it's the way it should be, right? I mean, ultimately, they are the customers, they're the users of the technology, and they should be telling vendors, what to be building, right? And I think, the forums such as the forum that we're in right now, the Open Networking Summit, gives really an opportunity for the users of the technology to come in and tell the vendors, here's what we'd like to see, and here's the way we'd like to use it. And so I think it's a very refreshing development.
Now, much is being made also of the fact that this is being done in an open way. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How open is open in SDN's context?
I think this is different, right, in the sense that it is being done not just as an open standard or as a specification, interface specification, protocol specification, but it's being done really as open source, right? So if you look at, for example, what's going on in the Open Daylight, Foundation, which is a derivative of the Linux Foundation. If you look at what's going on in Open Compute, what's really being done is not just specifications, right? People are writing, position papers or whatever. I mean, this is actual code that's being developed, right? And it's being done in the open. It's being done, in open source, where everything's visible, everything's out in the, everything's the conception is in the open as well. And I think it's hard to have a hidden agenda when you have that kind of a community. So I really do believe this is being done, with a very much an open perspective. There's broad participation. You see large companies, including, Cisco, IBM, Juniper, a whole bunch of others involved in this. You see lots of small startups involved. You see service providers involved. So, I mean, I do believe it is truly a change in the way innovation is happening in this particular industry. And I think it's very much for a very positive development here.
I've been to a couple of sessions of various standards bodies and seen it in action. It's not a gentlemanly process. There's a lot of shouting and swearing and intensity at it.
Of course, yeah. But I mean, the thing is, decisions are made on technical merit, right? I mean, ultimately, that's really what you want. You want people to come in and talk about what they think is the right thing to do, right? Not what their particular corporate masters have asked them to do, but what they think is the right thing to do, and have these debates in a way that potential competitors can actually talk about the merits of the matter and make decisions in a joint fashion, and that's something that's pretty unique, I think, in this open source.
Well, they certainly do it with passion, because I've seen people almost come to blows over it.
Of course.
We'll gloss over that for the time being.
Yeah.
But back to the openness. How and when do you think open source, open network, open compute, etc., will fundamentally reshape and change the network for all time, or until the next tour de force in technology takes place?
Well, I think it's already happening. I mean, Open Daylight, for example, just announced the hydrogen release, right? A couple of weeks ago, and so that's a comprehensive SDN stack that's now available in open source. Yep. It's the first release, and it'll take some time to mature. But you can see, a lot of service providers starting to, kick the tires and adopt it, and start to use, Open Daylight in actual, at least limited scale deployments. OpenStack, which is, something that is sort of related kind of area, is also kind of reached a level of maturity. So I think you see a lot of these open source code bases, coming into a stage where, customers and vendors can start taking them and actually, incorporating them in either products or in actual real world deployments. It's not going to be, these things will mature over time, and the whole process of open source is something which, it's not going to come out as a fully formed product on day one. But what will happen is, the community will come together and, address issues and, fix performance problems, fix bugs, and as long as you have a thriving community around these things, which you do in these cases, I think the process will work towards having, mature code bases that can be deployed. So
standards are important, obviously. Mm-hmm. In SDN as much as anything else, but there seems to be an awful lot of them out there. There seem to be a lot of standards bodies. Are there too many to make SDN the sort of universal panacea, do you think?
I think it's a legitimate concern, right, to worry about fragmentation here, right? So you certainly don't want, multiple standards bodies, defining the same sorts of things. Sure. I don't think that's happened in SDN. I think the ONF has done a great job in terms of open flow, and is pretty much, the accepted body that defines this. You've got certain components being standardized in the IETF and other places, and then you've got open source, right? And I think ultimately, in some ways, that embodies the standard, right? A standard, a specification is really only as good as I guess the skill of the ones who are writing out, the protocol and so forth. And there's always little gaps in terms of defining exactly, how a particular protocol or a particular interface works. And, interoperability is never really assured between different vendors if you have a standard. But if you have open source, right, you have actual code, and it's the same code, or at least the same framework that's running both, and, both vendors are using. Then the chances of interoperability are that much better, right? And so I think, I think we have to guard against this fragmentation. I don't think it's happened yet, and I think the emergence of open source, I think, really is the thing ultimately that'll ensure interoperability, which is really the basic goal of standards bodies.
Dr. Inder Gopal, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.